I swear there are moments I feel like a ghost long before death ever touches me. Not in the poetic, tragic sense, more like I'm already fading while sitting at my own kitchen table. I exist, technically. I breathe. I eat. I sleep beside a woman who used to curl into my chest and whisper she couldn't fall asleep without me, and now barely acknowledges whether I come to bed or stay on the couch. Funny how silence can scream louder than arguments ever could. This morning started like the last thousand. She moved around me in the kitchen like I was a chair or a cabinet, something useful, always there, but never worth looking at. She brushed past me, not touching me, not even by accident. Used to be that if her hip even grazed mine, she'd blush and bite her lip. Now it's choreography, polite avoidance. Trash pickup today, she said, eyes fixed on her phone as she grabbed her bag. No good morning. No warmth. Just logistics, schedules, tasks. Marriage, the business edition. Okay, I answered, and I hated how small my voice sounded. Careful, controlled. Like if I spoke too loud, I disturbed the routine we'd traded love for. She used to kiss me before she left. Sometimes passionately, sometimes soft and sleepy. Now the front door clicked shut, and it felt like the house exhaled relief. I stood there in the kitchen, holding a mug of coffee that suddenly tasted like nothing. Somewhere along the way, she stopped tasting me too. My touch, my humor, my desire. I don't even remember the last time we had sex. And worse, I can't remember the last time she looked at me like I was a man she wanted, not a husband she had. I still catch moments, flashes of memory, where her hands roamed my back, her breath warm at my neck, her body pulling mine closer, hungry, needy. Now she walks around in her robe, hair damp from the shower, skin smelling like vanilla and heat, and I don't think she'd notice if I stared or didn't. I'm not starved for sex. I'm starved for being seen. For a smile meant for me. For a hand on my chest that wasn't checking a laundry tag. I cleaned the kitchen. Like always. Out of habit, not hope. On the fridge, a calendar full of appointments and reminders we barely speak about. Dentist. Groceries. Her book club. Her yoga nights. My only consistent entry. Take out trash. Once, I dreamed about building a life with her. Now I just maintain the one she prefers to pretend is fine. It's not fighting that kills love. It's quiet. Quiet so heavy it drains blood from the walls. When I got to work, I caught myself staring at my reflection in the office elevator doors. I wasn't always like this. I used to smile easily. I used to flirt, harmlessly, playfully. I used to laugh with her until we cried. I used to feel like a man who mattered. Now I feel like background noise in a story I once thought I was the co-author of. People say marriages don't collapse overnight. They erode. No explosions, no dramatic betrayals. Just slow decay. Kindness replaced by courtesy. Touch replaced by schedules. I love you replaced by did you pay the bill? And every day, a little more of you dissolves. Once, I would have reached for her waist as she cooked, whispered something teasing, earned that little moan she used to make when I kissed her neck. Now I stand still. Afraid if I try and she pulls away, it will confirm what I already know. I'm not wanted here. Not even disliked. Just invisible. And maybe the saddest thing is I've gotten used to it. Learn to move quietly. Learn not to expect excitement when I walk into the room. Learn to avoid small arguments because they aren't worth the vacuum that follows. Learn that loneliness doesn't need empty rooms. It can live between two people, breathing heavier than both of them. Some men cheat in marriages like mine. Some drink. Some run. Me? I good boy my way through the emptiness, convincing myself stability is the same as happiness. That respect without affection is enough. That her neutral tone means peace. But sometimes, in those rare moments when she brushes past me and something inside aches, not sexual hunger, but sheer human longing, I remember I'm alive in here somewhere. Trapped, quiet, dimmed, but alive. I don't know what I'm waiting for. A miracle? A fight? A touch? Or maybe just proof I'm not imagining this slow dissolving of us. Of me. Tonight, she'll come home, and we'll talk about tomorrow's schedule. We will coexist gracefully, like well-trained roommates in a decent rental. And I'll lie in bed beside her, inhaling the scent of a woman I once would have crawled through fire for, and she won't turn toward me. I won't touch her, and the house will stay quiet. But inside me, something is starting to whisper again. A tiny voice I haven't heard in years. There has to be more than this. Some mornings I wake up before the alarm and lie still, breathing into the quiet like it might choke me if I move too suddenly. It's not fear, more like habit. As if peace only exists when I don't disturb it. I used to wake up differently. God, I remember those mornings. I'd stretch, grin like an idiot, pull her against me and bury my face in her neck because that spot right under her ears smelled like sun-warmed skin and home. She used to giggle, that soft, breathy laugh that made my heart jump, and she'd twist around in my arms, kiss me slow, eyes sleepy but bright. Even the lazy mornings turned into something warm, intimate, messy, human. Sometimes sex, sometimes just two people tangled together, whispering ridiculous plans and big dreams with morning hair and no shame. Now, her alarm goes off, and she gets up like she's being summoned to court. Efficient, mechanical, not cold, but nowhere near warm. She showers, dresses, tie-back hair, makeup, coffee, minimal eye contact. No good morning, no accidental brush of fingers, no shared smiles. Politeness has murdered passion in my house and gotten away with it. And I can't even blame her completely. Somewhere, I let pieces of myself dull. I became careful, too careful, like a man living in a museum of what used to be, afraid to touch anything in case it breaks. I think about who I used to be. I used to talk too loud when I was excited. I used to joke, flirt a little, not to start anything, just because I liked watching people light up. I liked feeling like I could bring life into a room. I had hobbies. I had opinions. I had confidence in my shoulders. Now I monitor my tone around her like every sentence needs editing before delivery. Don't sound needy. Don't sound annoyed. Don't sound empty. Don't sound like you miss her, because that might make her uncomfortable. I move softly, quietly, like a damn guest in my own life. I remember sitting at a bar once, before we were married. I was laughing with friends, arm around her waist, her fingers tracing the inside of my wrist. We were drunk on possibility. She looked at me like I was fire, warm, bright, inevitable. She told me later my energy made her feel alive, like she could do anything if I was in her corner. When did I stop being that man? When did I trade spark for safety, passion for predictability? And why did she stop needing the version of me she once loved so fiercely? People romanticize marriage as this endless bond, but it's also erosion, compromise, stability turning into stasis. I'm not naive, love evolves. Lust cools. Real life settles like dust on a once shiny shelf. But it's supposed to evolve into something deep, comforting, intimate. Not silence so thick I can't breathe. Sometimes I think if I spoke honestly, if I said, I miss us. I miss you. I miss feeling like your husband, not your roommate. She'd look at me like I was overreacting. Or worse, like she didn't understand what I meant at all. We don't fight because fighting means impact. Conflict requires care. We just exist. Neutral. Civil, muted. Walking around each other with polite nods and carefully chosen tones like an invisible agreement holds everything together. No one mentions the absence of love, and no one gets hurt. There was a time I would have torn the world down to keep us connected. I planned surprises. I brought flowers without occasion. I cooked dinner, lit candles, played music. I used to press kisses to her shoulder when she was doing dishes, run my fingers down her spine, feel her lean back into me with that slow coiling hunger. Now when I pass behind her in the kitchen, she steps aside automatically, like she already predicted the path of my ghost body. And I let her. I participate in my own disappearance. I don't crave passion like some porn-drunk teenager. I don't even crave wild sex. Though Jesus, I miss being touched like I mattered. I crave kindness. Attention. Someone seeing my face and not just the tasks attached to it. I crave being known. There's a man inside me who hasn't died. He's just buried under routine and resignation. I feel him sometimes, clawing a little, whispering that I used to be alive. That happiness wasn't a story I imagined. That someone once looked at me and saw magic. Maybe that's the cruelest part, remembering. Because memories don't fade gently. They pierce. They flash. They remind you what you once had by showing you how empty your hands are now. Last night, while she scrolled on her phone beside me, I looked at her out of habit, not hope. Her face lit by the screen, not by me. I felt this tightness in my chest. Not anger, not jealousy. Grief. I miss us. I miss me. I turned off the bedside lamp and stared at the ceiling, silent, breathing slowly so I didn't disturb the quiet we've both mistaken for peace. And I thought, for the first time in a long time, Maybe I'm not broken. Maybe I'm just lost. And maybe I don't want to disappear anymore. Somewhere inside, a spark flickered, faint, fragile, but real. A reminder. I used to be alive. And God, I want to feel like that again. It started as a morning like any other. Bland toast, quiet kitchen, her eyes glued more to the coffee machine than to me. A soft bye from her, a soft see you from me, both spoken with the emotional investment of two co-workers passing in a hallway. But the air outside felt different. Or maybe I just finally noticed it again. Crisp, clean, awake. Like life was happening somewhere beyond the numb routine I'd settled into. I stopped at a cafe near work, not because I wanted coffee, but because I wanted to sit somewhere I didn't already feel erased. A little place with fogged windows and the smell of fresh pastries. Life in the air, not just caffeine. I sat at the counter. The steam hissed from the espresso machine. Mugs clinked. People chatted about trivial things like weekend plans or a new show they started. I realized it had been months, maybe years, since I'd talked about something that didn't involve chores, bills, schedules, or what time dinner should be. Then she appeared, the waitress. Brown hair pulled loosely into a ponytail, strands falling free in an effortless, messy way that looked like she lived in motion. Warm eyes. A smile that didn't look practiced, like it wasn't part of a job, but a habit of someone who still felt things openly. Morning, she said. What can I get started for you? Her voice had that soft rasp some people have, like life hasn't smoothed their edges. It's only made them warmer. I ordered coffee. Boring. Safe. Routine. She placed the cup in front of me, hands steady, eyes bright. I like your energy, she said. I blinked. My what? She laughed, a real, genuine laugh that crinkled the edges of her eyes. Your energy. You walked in like you were thinking about 100 things at once, but still holding yourself together. It's, I don't know, attractive. Attractive. I didn't realize how hungry I was for that word until it hit me. Not because of flirtation, though something warm did twist quietly in my chest, but because someone saw me. Saw something in me. Not useful. Not predictable. Not quiet or dependable or routine. Attractive. I must have looked stunned because she softened her voice. Sorry, was that weird? I pay attention to people. She shrugged, cheeks slightly pink. It's part of the job. No, I said, shaking my head slowly. It wasn't weird. It was nice. Nice didn't cover it. It felt like water in a desert. Like oxygen I hadn't breathed in years. She smiled again, soft this time, gentler. Well, you have an attractive energy. Just thought you should know. I tried to think of the last time someone complimented me without obligation or sarcasm. I couldn't. My wife used to. In the early days. She used to call me handsome, charming, her favorite person. Somewhere along the way, I became background, a reliable appliance, rarely noticed unless broken. But here, in a cafe, a stranger had just seen me. Not what I do, not my responsibilities, but me. I sat there for a moment after she walked away, staring into the swirl of my coffee like it suddenly mattered. My chest felt warm, my throat tight, and I hated how emotional that single comment made me. Like I'd been starving, and someone casually handed me food without realizing I hadn't eaten in years. I didn't flirt back, didn't lean in or test boundaries. That wasn't what this was. It wasn't lust. It wasn't temptation. It was validation, presence, recognition. When I paid and stood to leave, she caught my eye again. Have a good day, she said. Not the robotic customer service, have a good day. She meant it. You too, I replied, and it surprised me how sincerely it came out. Outside, the world felt sharper. Colors clearer. Sounds louder. My steps felt a little different, not lighter, exactly, but grounded. Real. Walking to work, I caught my reflection in a storefront window. I didn't look any different from the man in the elevator days ago. Tired eyes, lines that didn't used to be there, hair starting to show gray at the edges. But there was something else, a faint spark in my expression. A reminder that I wasn't invisible. Not everywhere. Not to everyone. When I got home that night, my wife was already there. She glanced at me when I walked in, just long enough to acknowledge my existence, then returned to scrolling on her phone. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, to share a moment from my day, to connect even in a small way. Instead, I closed it again. She didn't look up, and I felt it, the contrast so sharp it almost hurt. A stranger had looked at me and genuinely seen something worth remarking on. The woman I married barely looked long enough to see whether I was a ghost or a shadow. That night, lying in the darkness beside her, I didn't feel angry. Not yet. I just felt awake. And the quiet inside me wasn't numb this time. It was stirring, shifting, reaching for something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in too long. Hope, maybe. Or the first inhale after drowning for years. One sentence, one simple moment, had cracked something open in me. It wasn't desire for her. It was desire for myself. And now that I'd tasted it, I wasn't sure I could go back to being invisible again. The morning after the cafe, I stared at my razor like it was some relic from a past life. For months, shaving felt pointless. Who was I trying to impress? The office didn't care. My wife didn't notice. Most days I dragged the blade across my face just enough to not look like a man who'd given up, but not enough to look like someone who still tried. But today I did it slowly, deliberately. Hot water, fresh blade, steam curling from the mirror. I leaned closer, studying the face looking back at me. There were lines I didn't remember earning, shadows under my eyes, a quiet tiredness. But also shape, definition, a jawline beneath the fatigue. A man who could exist again if he wanted to. I shaved smooth, trimmed my hair, buttoned a shirt I hadn't worn in months. Not fancy, just not one of the stretched old ones I'd grown lazy with. The kind of shirt you put on when you still believe you deserve to feel good in your own skin. When I stepped into the living room, my wife glanced at me briefly. Not lingering, not curious, just a flicker of recognition that I physically existed in the room. "You're ready early," she said. I waited, foolishly, for something else. "You look nice." Or "big day at work." Or even a raised eyebrow. Something. But she was already looking back at her laptop, tapping keys like she hadn't said anything at all. It shouldn't have hurt. I barely expected it, and still it landed like a dull weight in my chest. I wasn't doing it for her, I reminded myself. This wasn't a performance. This wasn't see me, not anymore. This was remember me. On my break, I didn't scroll my phone like usual. I walked, hands in pockets, wind on my face, body moving with purpose instead of routine. My steps felt different, not lighter, more grounded, like I suddenly occupied my space again. And like some stubborn tether, that compliment from the waitress looped around in my head. "You have an attractive energy." It wasn't her words. It was the truth they reminded me of. I used to walk with an energy. I used to feel. At lunch, I caught my reflection again in a glass door. For the first time in a long time, I didn't immediately look away. I straightened my posture. It felt strange at first, almost unnatural, like trying on someone else's body language. But there it was, the faintest glimpse of the man I used to be. Not handsome like some movie lead, not young like I once was, but solid, present, a man with a spine, not a shadow with shoulders. When work ended, I didn't rush home. I took the long way, not hiding, just not hurrying to a place where silence waited. On the sidewalk, a jogger passed me, and I nodded without thinking. She nodded back with a simple, friendly smile. Such a small thing, but it hit me like sunlight. I was still part of the world. I could still move inside it, not just around it. At home, I cooked dinner. Real dinner. Not survival food, not microwave something. The sound of chopping vegetables. The sizzle of olive oil. The warmth of a pan. It felt good. Grounding. When my wife came in, she glanced at the stove like it surprised her I was capable of more than existing in the background. "Oh," she said. "You cooked." Not gratitude. Not curiosity. Just acknowledgement. A statement about an object in the room. "I did," I replied, voice steady. Not eager for approval, not braced for indifference. Just a man answering a question that wasn't really a question. She nodded. "I ate already." Meeting ran late. Of course she had. And of course she didn't think to text. Months ago, maybe even weeks ago, that would have stung. Today, it floated right past me, weightless. "I'll put the leftovers away," I said calmly. She looked at me then. Actually looked, maybe trying to read if I was upset. I wasn't. Not in that familiar tight chest, anxious way. Instead, the distance between us felt clear. Defined. Like stepping back from a painting and realizing it wasn't beautiful anymore, just familiar. I ate alone at the table, and for once the loneliness didn't feel like abandonment, it felt like space. Breathing room. A quiet hollow that might someday be filled with something real again. Later, after she went to bed, I stood in the bathroom brushing my teeth. I leaned toward the mirror, studying my reflection again, foam in the corner of my mouth like a man caught mid-transformation. I saw tired eyes, but not dead ones. I saw age, but also presence. And beneath the mild exhaustion, there it was again, that flicker of something alive. Hope, confidence, maybe even a little quiet defiance. I didn't go back to the cafe that day, or the day after, not because I was afraid of her, but because I was nervous about me. Hope is a fragile animal when it first wakes up. It needs gentle handling. And right now, my reflection mattered more than her validation ever could. Before, I used to avoid mirrors because they reminded me of what I lost. Tonight, I looked into one and saw possibility. A man resurfacing. A man remembering he once had dreams, humor, confidence, a pulse. I didn't fix everything in a week. I didn't suddenly reclaim my life with one compliment. But I felt the shift. Not for the waitress. Not to provoke my wife. But because something inside me whispered, steady and quiet. You deserve to feel good again. And for the first time in a very long time, I believed it. It started small, like most shifts do. A slightly longer glance, a delayed blink, a subtle pause in her routine. Nothing dramatic. God knows our marriage hasn't had anything dramatic in years. More like a flicker of awareness in a woman who'd grown used to me blending into furniture. The first time she noticed something different was on a Tuesday. She came into the kitchen and saw me buttoning a shirt. Not a wrinkled one pulled off the back of a chair, but one ironed, fitted, tucked. She frowned a little. Big meeting, she asked. No, I said simply. Her eyebrows lifted, almost imperceptibly. Confusion baked with caution. Not quite jealousy, just surprised that I had a reason to care about how I looked that didn't involve her. She didn't comment further, but she watched me longer than usual before turning back to the fridge. Later that evening, while she scrolled in silence next to me on the couch, she asked, "You've been leaving earlier lately?" There was no warmth in the question, no curiosity wrapped in affection. It was surveillance disguised as conversation. I felt that difference now, the way concern used to touch her voice, versus control, now tracing the edges. I like walking in the mornings, I said. True, not defensive. Oh, she stared at her phone again, pretending not to think too hard. Since when? Recently. A beat. You never used to. I looked at the TV. I never used to feel like I needed to. She didn't respond, but her posture changed, a small stiffness in her shoulders, a micro flinch in her fingers. Something unsettled her. A flutter in the nest she thought would always hold me obedient and quiet. But she didn't say why. Didn't ask how I was. Didn't say she missed me or felt distance between us. She just kept an eye on me, as if I were a vase suddenly moved 2 inches off center. Days passed. I kept shaving clean, walking, eating better, sitting straighter. My routines weren't explosive, just intentional. And funny enough, I didn't feel guilty about it. Not anymore. One afternoon she stepped into the hall as I was tying my shoes. Where are you going? To get some fresh air. What for? I almost laughed. Fresh air needed justification now? Because I want to breathe, I said with a half smile. She didn't return it. She crossed her arms instead. You've been very active lately. Her tone wasn't admiration. It was curiosity sharpened into suspicion. A tone she never used back when I was quiet and dull and easy to ignore. Trying to feel better, I answered. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something sarcastic, something defensive, then closed it. This wasn't the version of me she knew how to handle. I wasn't sulking or begging or tiptoeing. I was calm. Calm is unsettling when someone expects either anger or surrender. That night in bed, she scooted closer. Not cuddling, not affection, just proximity, like a person mentally marking territory. Her hand brushed mine. No tenderness, no warmth, just contact, almost clinical. You're quiet lately, she whispered. I could have laughed at that, as if she'd only just noticed. Instead, I stared at the ceiling. I've always been quiet, I said. You just used to listen. Her breath paused. A hit she didn't expect. But there was no fight, only silence. She wasn't prepared for honesty. Conflict requires emotional investment, and our marriage had run on autopilot, so long neither of us remembered the controls. The next morning, she wore perfume. Not the usual subtle stuff, but the one she used when we were younger, when she'd press against me at parties, eyes sparkling with private hunger. She passed me in the kitchen with a too casual flip of hair, waiting for my reaction. It smelled familiar. Nostalgic. Once it would have had me kissing her neck, and pulling her close. Today, all it did was remind me how long it had been since she'd cared to smell good for me. Only now that she feared I might be seeing myself again. "You're wearing something different," I said. She brightened an inch. "You noticed?" "I noticed more than you think." That wasn't flirtation, it was truth, and she heard it. She looked at me like she was trying to solve a puzzle that should have stayed in place forever. Suddenly, she had questions. "Who do you talk to when you go out? Why are you dressing nicer lately? Are you trying to impress someone?" Funny, when I begged for attention silently, she never blinked. But now that I was no longer begging, now she looked like someone guarding her property line. Possession, not passion. Territory, not love. She didn't want me. She wanted the guarantee of me. The convenience. The certainty. The silent man who stayed home, stayed predictable, stayed invisible. Too late. Life had stirred in me again. Not some wild rebellion. Not a midlife crisis. Not an affair. Just breath. Interest. Presence. A heartbeat that wasn't muffled under resignation. She mistook that for threat. And watching her realize she might actually lose something she never bothered to hold, that was the moment I understood. She didn't miss me. She missed control. She missed the certainty of my submission, my softness, my quiet compliance. Only now that I was lifting my head did she remember I had a face. She looked at me like a question she'd never thought she'd have to answer. What happens if he stops needing me before I remember to need him? It wasn't satisfying. It wasn't bitter triumph. If anything, it was sad. A grief not for what we had, but for what she didn't notice until it slipped out of her grasp. Not because I ran, but because I finally stood up. And in that moment I realized I wasn't her ghost anymore. She was mine. It took me a full week to go back. Not because I didn't want to, but because I did. That feeling scared me more than the emptiness at home ever had. Emptiness is familiar. Attention is dangerous. It wakes things inside you that you thought had died peacefully. But that Wednesday morning, I walked into the cafe again. The bell over the door chimed, soft and warm, and the smell of espresso wrapped around me like a memory I hadn't earned yet. I wasn't dressed like a new man, nothing dramatic. Just intentional. Clean shave, nice shirt, shoulders not slouched like I was apologizing for existing. She was wiping down the counter. When she looked up and saw me, her face lit, not polite service smile lit. Lit. The kind of reaction that says, "Oh, you came back. I hoped you would." "Hey," she said, voice softer than I remembered, like maybe she'd been thinking about what to say too. "You disappeared." I swallowed. "Got busy." She lifted a brow knowingly. "Busy or hiding?" "I couldn't help it." I smiled. "Maybe both." She leaned on the counter, chin resting on her hand. "Well, I'm glad you're here." Then she lowered her voice slightly, just enough to curl something warm in my chest. "You look good." That shouldn't have mattered as much as it did. But those 3 words had more life in them than anything I'd heard at home in months. I ordered coffee, though I barely cared what it tasted like. I just wanted to be there, present, around someone who spoke to me like I had color. She moved like she had purpose. Like thoughts excited her. Like days meant something. I envied it and admired it at the same time. When she came back with my drink, she didn't leave right away. "So," she said, sliding the mug toward me, "tell me something real." That line hit me. Not how's work. Not nice weather. Something real. I sat back, considering. I've been trying to feel like myself again. Her eyes softened. That bright empathy you can't fake. Good. He seems like someone worth returning to. I looked down into the coffee, absorbing that. Nobody had said anything like that to me in years. Compliments at home had turned into critiques disguised as helpfulness. Encouragement had become direction. Partnership had become scheduling. "Are you always like this?" I asked. "Like what?" "Encouraging strangers." She laughed. "Only the ones who look like they forgot they mattered." Something in my chest tightened. Not sadness, not longing. Something more dangerous. Recognition. She told me she was studying psychology, working her way through school, dreaming of one day opening a small cafe of her own. Her eyes glowed when she talked about it, passion alive and unapologetic. She didn't speak like someone performing for admiration. She spoke like someone who believed in her life. I listened, really listened, and I realized how rare that had become for me. Conversation without agenda, words without tension, laughter without caution. "Everyone has a story," she said at one point. "Most people just forget they're allowed to edit theirs." I felt the breath catch in my throat. I think I've been living the wrong draft. Then rewrite, she said simply. I chuckled. It's not that easy. She shrugged. It doesn't have to be fast. Just honest. There was a moment, fleeting but real, where our eyes met and held. Not sexual, though yes, there was heat beneath it. But the deeper current wasn't lust. It was aliveness, awareness. Two people seeing each other without expectation. And that made it more intimate than sex. When I got up to leave, she reached out lightly, fingertips brushing mine as she handed me my receipt. That tiny touch shot through me like a reminder that I wasn't numb, just starved. Hey, she said softly. Whatever you're doing, keep going. You look awake. Awake. A better compliment than handsome. More dangerous, too. Walking out, the air felt different again, charged, like static before a storm. My reflection in the cafe window looked like a man about to make choices. Not reckless ones. Not forbidden ones. Just choices. At home, everything felt smaller. Dimmer. My wife looked up from her laptop when I walked in. Really looked this time. Eyes scanning me, pausing on my shirt, tracing my posture. Where were you? The question wasn't caring, it was inventory. Accounting. Habitual ownership. I got coffee. With who? My voice stayed calm. With myself. She stared a moment longer, confusion mixing with unease. She didn't know what exactly she was losing. Control? Certainty? Convenience? But she felt it. She didn't say she missed me. Didn't apologize. Didn't touch me. She just needed to know I hadn't drifted too far outside her orbit. But I already had. That night, in the dark, she shifted closer again. Not tenderness, territory. I didn't move. Didn't pull away. But I didn't lean in either. There is a difference between not leaving and wanting to stay. And somewhere in that silence, the truth settled. I wasn't falling in love with the waitress. I was falling back into myself. And she just happened to see me while I did it. She didn't save me. I was saving myself. But she was the first person in a long, long time who made me remember why I was worth saving. Detachment isn't loud. It doesn't slam doors or fling accusations. It doesn't announce itself with raised voices or shattered plates. It doesn't even feel like leaving at first. It feels like breathing. Quietly. Slowly. Without asking permission. I didn't plan it. I didn't wake up and think, today's the day I stopped trying. It just happened. A gradual loosening of the knots I'd tied myself into for years. A release of the constant pressure to be small, soft, accommodating. A letting go of the constant fear that if I showed hurt, I'd be punished with silence. One evening I came home later than usual. Not late. Just late for a man who used to hurry back to a place that only offered routine and obligation. She was sitting on the sofa, dinner tray folded beside her, news humming from the TV. No greeting. No, where were you? Just a glance. Not at me, but at the clock behind me. You didn't answer my text, she said. I didn't see it. That was true. For once, I hadn't been watching my phone like it was an oxygen tank. I made food, she added. I already ate. The old me, the ghost, would have apologized, offered excuses, felt guilty for taking up space. But I just said it and walked to the kitchen to place my keys down. No defensiveness. No shame. Just fact. She stared, perplexed. Not hurt, just inconvenienced by my autonomy. I could have saved some, she murmured, more habit than care. You don't have to, I said, voice even. Go ahead and do what works for you. And there it was, a crack in the script. The line she didn't expect. The version of me who didn't run toward her for approval or flinch at her disappointment. She didn't know what to do with that version. Later, she came into the living room and sat beside me, closer than usual. Close enough that I could smell her shampoo, feel the warmth of her leg near mine. Once, that would have set my pulse racing. Once, that proximity meant affection, desire, connection. Now, it felt like someone trying to hold a balloon by the string after letting it drift too long. How was your day? She asked. I blinked. That question used to be routine, meaningless. But tonight it sounded unfamiliar, as though she'd found it dust covered in a drawer she hadn't opened in years. It was good, I said, not offering more. She waited for elaboration. None came. You're quiet lately. A soft laugh escaped me. I've always been quiet. I was just desperate back then, so you noticed it. Her face twitched, a flash of something like guilt or annoyance masquerading as concern. I'm trying, she said. I know, I replied calmly. So am I. We didn't speak after that. We just sat there, two bodies sharing a couch like strangers on a long flight, pretending proximity equaled connection. The next morning, she woke before me. Unusual. She was dressed for work early, hair neat, clothes intentional, makeup just a little heavier than usual. I watched her in the mirror as she adjusted her blouse, smoothing fabric over her waist like she wanted to feel beautiful again. Big meeting? I asked gently, echoing her old question to me. She paused. No, just wanted to look nice. I nodded. No sarcasm, no pointed commentary, but she still seemed unsettled by the neutrality of it. As I passed her in the hallway, her hand caught my arm lightly. A touch, but not a tender one, more like a hook. A test. We should do something this weekend, she said. I met her eyes. Maybe. Not yes. Not desperation. Not eagerness to earn affection. Just maybe. She blinked, and I felt it again. That shift in her posture, that tightening in her jaw. She was feeling something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. Uncertainty. Not fear of losing me because she loved me, but fear of losing the part of me she'd assumed would always wait. That night, I ate dinner alone again. Except this time, the silence didn't ache, it soothed. I put on music. I cooked something simple. I poured a glass of wine and sat at the table like a man, not a ghost rehearsing his invisibility. She watched me from the doorway, arms crossed. You didn't tell me you were making dinner. You didn't ask. A beat. A flicker of annoyance crossed her face. I could have eaten with you. And you still can. There's food. I smiled, not mocking, not pleading, just offering. She hesitated. Then she shook her head and left the room. Not out of anger, out of confusion. I wasn't doing this to punish her. I was doing it because I wasn't starving anymore. Later that night, as we lay in bed, she whispered, "Are you unhappy?" I stared at the ceiling. The truth was simple, so I didn't dress it up. I've been unhappy for a long time. Her breath caught. Not dramatically, quietly, like someone hearing a diagnosis they suspected but never wanted confirmed. Why didn't you tell me? I turned my head, met her eyes in the dark. I did. You just didn't hear me. She didn't argue, didn't defend, didn't apologize. She just went still, stiff and silent, like someone who realized the house was on fire long after the smoke alarm stopped working. I rolled onto my side, away from her, but not in cruelty. Just distance. Honest, quiet distance. And for the first time in our bed in years, I fell asleep without that familiar tightness in my chest. Without trying to mold myself into a shape that fit her comfort. Without hoping for a touch that wouldn't come. I didn't stop loving her that night. I just stopped chasing her. Stopped chasing attention that didn't want to land on me. Stopped handing my worth over like something that needed her signature. People think detachment is cold. It isn't. It's warm, gentle even. A slow thaw after years of being frozen stiff. A body remembering blood. A voice remembering its volume. She wasn't the enemy. She just wasn't my oxygen anymore. And I realized my life didn't need to revolve around being chosen. I could choose myself. Quietly. Peacefully. Without apology. I didn't plan it. That's what I keep telling myself. I didn't wake up and decide tonight. I'm going to meet her after her shift. Life just nudged me. A long day, a longer silence at home, and the knowledge that I wanted to sit somewhere I felt human. The cafe was nearly empty when I walked in. Soft jazz played, chairs stacked on tables, the warm glow of closing time wrapping the place in something intimate. She was wiping down the espresso machine when she looked up and saw me, and I swear, the whole room shifted just a little. You came late, she said, smiling like she'd been waiting but would pretend she hadn't. Long day, I replied. You want something? I can sneak one more cup. I shook my head. Actually, I just wanted to see you. She didn't blush like some flattered schoolgirl. She held my gaze, steady, curious, warm. I'm almost off. Give me 5 minutes? 5 minutes. I could have waited 5 hours. When she finally untied her apron and grabbed her coat, we stepped outside into a night that felt cooler, clearer. The street was quiet, city lights humming, the world unhurried for once. We started walking without direction, like we both knew the point wasn't the destination but the company. So, she said, stuffing her hands in her jacket pockets, tell me something true. I laughed softly. You really don't like small talk, do you? Nope. Life's short. People waste it saying nothing real. She glanced at me. So? Truth. Go. I exhaled slowly. I've been married a long time. And I forgot what it feels like to be seen. She didn't look shocked or scandalized. Just thoughtful, a crease forming between her brows. That's a lonely place to live, she murmured. It is. And yet, she teased gently, you're here. I'm not here to escape her, I said quickly. I'm here because talking to you reminds me I exist. She nodded. No judgment. No self-congratulation. Just understanding. Sometimes someone shows up right when you start waking up again. Doesn't mean they're the reason. Just means they noticed first. I stopped walking. Her words hit deeper than she knew. That's exactly it. She shrugged lightly. I notice people. It's a blessing and a curse. We walked again. At one point our hands brushed. Neither of us flinched, but neither grabbed hold either. Electricity, but quiet, like a current running under the surface rather than lightning striking. You ever thought about leaving? She asked softly. I considered the question. Not until recently. I always believed loyalty meant staying. But now I wonder if loyalty also means being loyal to yourself. She looked at me like I'd said something sacred. Then, do you still love her? Love. God. That question sat heavy. I love who we used to be. I don't know if that's the same thing. Fair, she whispered. We passed a closed bookstore. A cat sat in the window, curled up on a stack of novels. She stopped to look at it, smiling softly. That little moment, so small, so human, tugged something inside me. It wasn't romantic fantasy. It was life. Presence. Warmth. Tell me a dream, she said suddenly. I blinked. A dream? Yeah. Don't say world peace or win the lottery. Something real. Something you forgot you wanted. I inhaled. And for the first time in years, I said it out loud. I used to want to make things. Build furniture. Woodworking. I loved it. Haven't touched a tool in years. Her face lit up. That's beautiful. Why'd you stop? Life got louder than my interests, I said quietly. Work. Responsibilities. Routine. She bumped her shoulder lightly into mine. Playful, but gentle. Start again. It's not that simple. Maybe it is. We reached a bench and sat, the night air cool against our faces. She turned to me, eyes soft in the streetlight. I like talking to you, she said. I like talking to you too. And I don't want to cross lines, she continued carefully. I'm not trying to be the reason something breaks. You're not, I said immediately. If something breaks, it's because it was already cracked. She nodded, relieved, but still respectful. It mattered to her, boundaries, dignity, integrity, that only made her more magnetic. She took a slow breath. I don't want to be someone's escape, but I don't mind being someone's reminder. Reminder of what? I asked quietly. That you're still alive. God, that sentence landed so deep it hurt. I didn't realize my eyes had softened until she looked at me like she could see the heat in them. Not lust, not yet. Something tender, dangerous in its honesty. We sat in silence then, the peaceful kind, not the dying marriage kind. Our shoulders touching lightly, not by accident, but by gravity. Eventually, I stood. I should go. Yeah, she nodded. But I'm glad you came. She didn't ask for my number. She didn't push. She just held my gaze, and something passed between us that didn't need defining. I hesitated, then said it honestly. I don't want to hurt her. Or you. Or myself. You won't, she whispered. As long as you're honest with yourself first. We lingered. That moment where two people could kiss, or walk away, and either path would change something forever. I stepped back. Not because I didn't want to move forward, but because I wasn't running this time. Good night, I said. Good night, she echoed, voice warm. On the drive home, I didn't feel guilt. I felt clarity. This wasn't cheating. This was breathing. This was remembering. This was the beginning of truth, not betrayal. For the first time in years, I didn't feel trapped in my life. I felt on the edge of choosing it. Or leaving it. Not for her, but for me. It didn't blow up. I think part of me expected it to, shouting, accusations, dramatic ultimatums. But real endings don't always erupt. Sometimes they arrive with a tired exhale, like a body finally admitting it can't hold itself upright anymore. I came home late again. Not suspiciously late, just later than the man I used to be. I'd gone for a walk after work. Needed air. Needed to hear my own thoughts without the muffling walls of our living room swallowing them whole. She was waiting at the kitchen island, arms crossed, jaw tight. Not worried. Not scared. Possessive. Alert. Territorial. A person who wasn't afraid of losing me, just afraid of losing certainty. We need to talk, she said. I almost laughed. That old phrase. The classic prelude to conversations couples should have had years before they burned out. Okay. She looked thrown off by how calmly I said it. I sat. She stood. That was fitting. We hadn't sat eye level to each other emotionally in months. You've been distant, she began. I've been quiet, I corrected. There's a difference. You're not here anymore. Her voice cracked, not from heartbreak, but from panic that I wasn't reacting the way she expected. You shut down. I didn't shut down, I said gently. I stopped begging. Silence stretched. She blinked slowly, like my words were landing second by second, heavier each time. You're changing, she said, almost accusing. I'm waking up, I whispered. She inhaled sharply. For a moment, vulnerability flashed across her face, so quick I almost missed it. Is there someone else? Not a gentle question. Not fear of betrayal. A threat veiled as concern. There's me, I said simply. I found myself again. That's not what I asked. I know. Her eyes narrowed. Are you cheating? No. Are you thinking about it? I held her gaze. I'm thinking about being happy. That landed harder than any confession would have. She wrapped her arms around herself, defensive, wounded in pride more than heart. Why didn't you say you were unhappy? I exhaled, a tired, soft sound. I did. Many times. In silence. In patience. In waiting. In reaching out and getting nothing back. You never said it out loud. I nodded slowly. Yeah, that's true. But marriage isn't supposed to require subtitles. You don't ignore a starving person because they didn't explicitly say the word hunger. Her lips trembled, but not from sorrow. From anger, ego, frustration, the realization that neglect has consequences. That silence isn't loyalty, it's erosion. We can fix this, she said suddenly, like she wanted to snatch the words out of the air before they fully escaped her mouth. We tried fixing it by pretending nothing was wrong. I replied. That didn't work. What do you want from me? She snapped, voice sharp. I shook my head. It's not about wanting something from you. It's about wanting something for myself. A beat of stillness. Heavy. Suffocating. Final. I don't want to be invisible anymore, I said. She stared at me, breath shallow, pulse visible in her neck. Not because she was losing love, but control. Security. Familiarity. So what? She whispered. You're leaving? I need space, I said softly. I need to breathe. To find myself fully, not halfway. Her nostrils flared. So you're walking out. I'm walking toward something. That's different. She turned away, shoulders stiff. How long have you been planning this? I haven't planned anything, I said honestly. I just finally realized staying isn't loyalty anymore. It's surrender. Her hands clenched. And you're not a quitter? No, I murmured. I just refused to keep drowning quietly. There was no shouting. No thrown objects. No dramatic collapse. Just two people standing in the ruins they built carefully, brick by brick, with years of polite indifference and unspoken need. I packed a bag. Not much, a few clothes, essentials, nothing that felt like tearing a life apart. She followed me down the hallway, eyes glossy but unbroken. Not a woman grieving love, but a woman shocked that someone chose himself before she chose him. At the door, she asked, voice trembling, "Is it because of her?" I turned, met her gaze honestly. No, it's because of me. And that was true. Entirely, painfully true. She didn't ask me to stay. She didn't cry. She didn't touch me. She just stared like someone realizing the lock on a door was only imaginary all this time. I walked out, the door clicking softly behind me. Not a slam, but a sigh. Outside, the night air felt different than it ever had leaving our home. It didn't feel cold. It felt wide, open, like oxygen in my lungs finally reached places it hadn't touched in years. I didn't call the waitress. I didn't need to. This wasn't a man running to someone new. This was a man finally walking toward himself. And for the first time in so long I could hardly remember, I felt something warm spread through me. Freedom. Not reckless freedom. Not lonely freedom. Hope-shaped freedom. I whispered to no one, to everyone, to the night itself. I'm not disappearing anymore. And the silence, for once, felt like peace, not punishment. I didn't rush to her. Maybe that's the part I'm proudest of. I didn't leave one life to sprint into another. I didn't cling to her like a lifeline. I didn't collapse into her arms expecting rescue. I sat alone first, in a small rented loft with bare walls and old wood floors that creaked like they'd seen other men resurrect themselves. There were 3 plates. 1 fork, A mattress on the floor and a lamp sitting on a cardboard box. Minimalism by accident. Newness by choice. And quiet. Not the dead quiet of my marriage, but stillness. Breathable stillness. A quiet with possibility instead of fear. A quiet where I wasn't shrinking. A quiet that didn't punish me. It healed me. I bought groceries. Cooked simple meals. Walked in the evenings with no destination. Sometimes I sat on the floor with a notebook and wrote things I hadn't let myself say out loud. Who am I when no one needs me to disappear? What excites me? What I want to build? What do I want to feel? And then, when I was sure I left for myself, not for an idea of her, I texted. Me, hey. Her, hey. How are you? Me, free. It feels strange. Good, but strange. Her, I'm proud of you. She didn't ask if I left for her. She didn't take credit. She didn't say, come here, let me fix you. She just said she was proud. We met at the cafe after her shift again, but it felt different this time. Not secretive, not dangerous, not like stolen oxygen. More like stepping into sunlight after months underground. She stood by the counter, wiping it down out of habit, and when she saw me, her smile softened instead of widened. It wasn't excitement, it was relief. You look lighter, she said. I feel lighter. We walked again, down quieter streets this time, passing shuttered boutiques and street lamps buzzing like tired guardians. She kept her hands tucked into her coat pockets, like she was afraid that touching me too soon might break what we were building. And honestly, I was glad. I didn't want rushing. I wanted remembering. So you left? She said gently. I did. For you, she said. Not a question, a truth she already knew. For me, I echoed. She exhaled, long and slow. Good. We sat on a bench again, the same one as before. She didn't lean into me, didn't grab my hand. Just sat there, breathing beside me like she understood something sacred was happening. A man reclaiming himself, not trading cages. I should say this, I murmured. I didn't leave to be with you. I know, she said. If you had, I'd have pulled away. I smiled. You respect boundaries more than most therapists I've met. She laughed softly. You're not a project. And I never wanted to be a replacement. Or a rebellion. You aren't. What am I then? She asked quietly. I turned and really looked at her, at the softness in her expression, the steadiness in her gaze, the warmth that felt less like temptation and more like sanctuary. You're someone I'm grateful to have met while finding my way back, I said. And if we build something, I want it to come from choice, not escape. Her lips curved slowly, not delighted, but moved. Then we'll build slow. She reached into her pocket and handed me something. A folded napkin with scribbled handwriting on it. What's this? A quote, she said, cheeks warming. One of my favorites. I unfolded it. You didn't fall in love with me. You woke up next to yourself, and I happened to be standing there. My throat tightened. She wasn't romanticizing me. She wasn't claiming destiny. She was acknowledging growth, the kind earned through bruises, not kisses. Can I tell you something honest? She asked. Always. I do feel something. For you. Not because you're lost. Because you're waking up. I nodded, heart thumping steady instead of frantic. I feel something too. She reached out, not for my hand, but for my sleeve. Just a light tug, fabric against fingertips. Then let's let it grow. Carefully. We stood and kept walking. At one point, our shoulders brushed and neither of us moved away. It wasn't a sexual spark, though underneath, there was warmth, promise, gravity. But mostly, it was human. Connection without urgency. She walked me back to my building. At the door, she hesitated. You want to come up? I asked softly. She shook her head. Not yet. I want our first time being in your space to feel like a beginning, not a reaction. Those words hit harder than desire ever could. She leaned forward and kissed my cheek. Not playful, not teasing. Slow, soft, intentional. Her lips lingered just a breath longer than necessary, like she wanted to say, I see you with touch instead of sound. When she pulled back, she whispered, welcome back to your life. And then she walked away, leaving warmth on my skin and steadiness in my chest. I went upstairs and sat on the floor of my empty loft, back against the wall, knees pulled up, a stupid smile tugging at my mouth. I wasn't alone. Not because of her. Because of me. She didn't become my home. I started building one inside myself again. And once you have that, love doesn't feel like salvation. It feels like choice. Separation papers don't sound dramatic when they hit the table. There's no echo, No cinematic thud, just a soft whisper of paper sliding, like even the universe is tired of pretending something still exists. We sat across from each other in a lawyer's office, the hum of fluorescent lights filling the space between us. She looked polished, composed, the kind of calm that comes not from peace, but from surrender. I felt steady, not triumphant, not bitter, just grounded. "This is really happening," she said quietly. "It already happened," I replied. "This is just us acknowledging it." She didn't cry. I didn't either. We hadn't cried for each other in years. Why start now? Maybe that was the clearest sign of all. Love hadn't ended in a blaze. It had dried up slowly, the way riverbeds crack under too much sun. When we signed, she looked at me one last time, really looked, and whispered, "Were we ever as happy as I remember?" "Yes," I said. "We were. And we stopped trying before we stopped caring." That truth didn't hurt either of us. It just settled, gentle and final, like dust finding its place. Outside, sunlight spilled over the street. Warm, honest, a new season in the air. I stood there breathing it in, feeling my chest expand with something I hadn't known I was starving for. Peace. Not relief. Not excitement. Peace. Weeks passed. Then months. The loft slowly filled, not with furniture first, but with life. A workbench in the corner. Wood shavings on the floor. Sandpaper, clamps, varnish. Hands stained again, not from stress or spreadsheets, but from creating something raw and real. The first time she visited, she ran her fingers along a stool I'd built, tracing the grain. "You made this?" "Yeah. It's beautiful," she said. "You can feel intention in it." Her presence didn't feel like escape anymore. It felt like invitation, to live, not to hide. We took things slow. No rushing into vows or declarations. We walked. We cooked. Sometimes she slept beside me, body warm against mine, her breath soft on my collarbone. And when we had sex for the first time, it wasn't frantic or fueled by rebellion. It was gentle, unhurried, two people meeting without the weight of filling old wounds. She touched me like she was learning, not claiming. I held her like I wasn't afraid anymore. And afterward, she laid on my chest, fingers softly tracing circles over my ribs. "You don't look like someone who escaped," she murmured. "I didn't escape," I said. "I chose." We didn't need to say more. One morning months later, bright spring light poured through her cafe windows, her cafe now. A rented space turned warm with plants, soft amber lights, mismatched wooden tables she insisted gave it personality. I had helped sand the counter. She chose the paint. We argued playfully about where to put the chalkboard menu. Eventually she won. She always did when it came to creative chaos. We stood on the sidewalk hanging the grand opening sign. Her hands shook a little, excitement vibrating through her. I tied the last knot on the ribbon and stepped back. "You did it," I said. She smiled and leaned into me, arms wrapping around my waist. "We did." I chuckled. "No, you did. I just brought with dust and opinions." She pressed a kiss to my cheek, soft, lingering, sure. "And belief," she whispered. The door chimed behind us as her first customer walked in. Chaos awaited. Stress, long hours, but also joy, purpose, growth, life. I looked at her, not like she was my rescue, not like she saved me, but like she was someone who walked beside me while I learned to stand again. She tucked her hair behind her ear, cheeks flushed, eyes bright, with that same spark I saw the first time she handed me a coffee. "You ready?" she asked. "For this?" I smiled. "Yeah." "For life," she corrected. I thought for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I'm not scared of being seen anymore." Her fingers slid between mine. "That's all you ever needed." We stepped inside together. Warmth, light, fresh coffee, laughter waiting to happen. No ghosts. No silence thick with resentment. Just two people who met while rebuilding themselves and chose to grow forward, not cling backward. As she greeted her first customer, I leaned behind the counter to adjust the sign one last time. The morning sun hit her hair like gold. She turned to look at me, and in that small shared glance I felt it again. Not fireworks, not fantasy. Home. Not because she was my home, but because I had finally built one inside myself, and she was someone worthy to welcome into it. I wrapped an arm around her waist, and she rested her head briefly on my shoulder, breath warm against my neck. She didn't save me, I whispered to myself. I saved myself first. She just met the man I finally remembered I am. And that was enough.